Hi, Barry Eaton. Welcome to Radio Out There. My guest, Bill Bennett, international film director, writer, and author, talks about his latest book, The Golden Bridge. Bill, good to talk to you again, and welcome once again to Radio Out There. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Barry.
Now, you are a very busy man at right the moment. You have a movie that you're putting together into its very important stages right now, and you have a book coming out this week. So thanks for taking the time to have a chat to us on the program.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Now, The Golden Bridge is the book that's coming out, and boy, it's a wonderful book. I read it for the first time last year when you sent me an advanced sort of copy, and then I've read it again in the last couple of days. And I'll tell you what, I loved it even more the second time round. It's a fantastic book, Bill.
Well, first off, thank you. I read it again. I had to do one last pass for typos,
I know
as you do. And I read it again after not having read it for quite some time.
Mm.
And Barry, I'm looking at this book and I'm thinking, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did this bloody book get written? I don't understand it. I mean, I'm thinking, gee, that's good writing.
No, it's
I
not
don't
good
think,
writing, Bill. It's bloody wonderful writing. I tell you, it's inspirational. And you told me how it all happened. Do you want to share that or not?
well, yeah. It was very, very strange. It was in the middle of COVID. It was wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up in the middle of the night sometime. It wasn't any sort of crazy thing like 333 or 444 or anything like that. It was just, I just woke up.
Just time, yeah.
Yeah. And the story was fully formed right in front of me. It's not that I had dreamt it. I hadn't dreamt it. I woke up and there was the story. And but more than that, there was a story with this message saying you must write this story. Anyway, I'm lying in bed and going, no, I'm not going to write this. There's no market for it. No one's going to be interested. I don't know that I could write something like that. And it's totally different from anything I've ever written in the past. And it makes no sense. And no, I'm not going to do it. And whoever it was who was giving me the story said, you're going to write it, buddy. This is not like a negotiation. You're going to write it. And I went, no, no. I could be wasting 6 months of my time on something that nobody would be interested in. It's not commercial. It makes no sense. Anyway, so they were really insistent, and I went, oh, all right, I'll write it. And Barry, look, it's just the really weirdest thing. It's just the really, really weirdest thing. And I can talk to you like this because you understand this. I literally had this quite vigorous conversation with whatever it is, that was giving me the story.
All coming through your thoughts.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. This is the way they communicate.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was just very, very strange. And I guess because I've made these films that I've made on intuition and so forth, that I've learned to take this seriously. I've learned not to discount this and to place value on it. And when something like this happens, then you've got to sit up and take notice, and you've got to take it seriously. And my natural response to it was no. this is totally different from anything I've ever done before. I don't know that I can do it. I don't know that I'm that good a writer. And I don't know that anybody in the end is going to be very, very interested. But, look, it was in the middle of COVID. I was getting some sort of government help. The government during COVID was giving money out to companies such as myself, if I could prove loss of business or whatever it was, So I was getting cash flowed, and I thought, well, why not?
Mm.
So what I did was I would start work at about 4 or 4:30 in the morning. I'd go downstairs, have two double espressos, and then I would just clear my mind. It's not that I sat down and meditated or anything like that. I didn't do that. I just swept my mind clear, and in part that was sort of helped by the fact that I was tired. It was that time in the morning. I'd just woken up,
Mm.
and I just wrote what came, and it was extraordinary.
Now, Bill, you said before it came to you fully formed. What do you mean by that?
Without doing any spoilers or anything like that.
No, no, no spoilers.
mm, but the story, the structural narrative of
Mm.
the story came fully formed. The detail wasn't there, but I had everything I needed to start.
So was it like a treatment that we were talking about in TV and film?
I knew who the character was.
Mm.
I knew what the character wanted from a dramatic point of view. I knew what the ending was. Um, and I knew what the journey was that the character um, had to take.
Mm.
So, but the individual chapters, um, they weren't there. But what happened, Barry, was that when I came down to write, they were there.
Right.
They just simply were there. And it was almost like I was transcribing. We talked the other day on the phone in preparation for this, and we talked about, writers who say, oh, it's channeled, so that makes it something special. And you and I both are cynics when it comes to this. It's of course it's channeled. That doesn't make it special.
Mm.
That's just the process that any creative person goes through. And I don't think that I don't place any kind of special property to this because it came the way that it came. I'm quite in awe of it, to be quite frank. I'm quite in awe of. Look, I look at that book and I think, how did I do this?
Mm.
And I also look at the book and I think, and I mean this in all seriousness, I don't think I can ever write anything as good as that ever again.
No, um, it is. It's absolutely amazing. As I said, I read it in about 24 hours again this week. I couldn't put it down. And it was absolutely. And at this stage, of course, I was watching it, reading it on screen. But what an amazing story! Now we talk about channeling, we talk about all inspiration, we talk about intuition, all of these things.
Mm.
Where do you, deep in your heart, where do you feel it's coming from? Coming from your intuition, coming from your higher self, coming from a spirit guide, coming from. Have you thought about that?
I have thought about it. Um, the very strange thing is this: I've just turned 70. I've got Parkinson's disease, as you know.
Mm.
Um, I should be slowing down. I
You'll never slow down. You know that. I know that.
I mean, you should talk about it, crikey. Bloody hell. Come on. Um, but I feel more productive and I feel like I'm more on top of my craft than I've ever been in my life.
That's wonderful.
And it's um and it's not kind of like racing against the clock to do things before I deteriorate. I don't kind of feel that. But what I do feel is this, is that I feel that anything I do, I have to look at as though, all right, could this be the last thing I ever do?
Mm.
And if it is, would I be happy that that's the last thing I ever do? So I really raised the bar in terms of choices. For a creative person, you know this yourself, Barry. For a creative person, the most difficult thing to do is to make a choice on how you're going to spend your time.
That's for sure.
What are you going to do? Because anything that you undertake, I mean, if it's film, it's going to be at least 3 years.
Mm.
If it's a book, it's going to be at least 12 months.
At least.
For me anyway. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a serious commitment of time.
Mm.
And for me, I'm counting back now. You know, I went on Google the other day and I Googled what is the average expected life expectancy, for an Australian male. So it's 86 years. That's 16 years if you're relatively healthy. I've got Parkinson's disease, so you might shave, say, 6 years off that. Let's say I've got 10 years left. I've got to be very selective in what I do.
Mm.
If I'm serious about this, it's not about making money or about being successful or anything like this. This is about doing stuff that's going to last, doing stuff that's going to be there after you're gone. That's the way I look at it.
Bill, this book is going to be there for a long time. I think it is going to be. I mean, you've already written a wonderful book on the Camino, and you're just making a film about that. But this will stand up as a work. It's a spiritual journey, a spiritual experience that so many people will get so much out of. And we're going to talk a little bit about it because I think people who are listening and watching right now will get one hell of a lot out of this. Inspiration, ideas, so many different things, comfort. And that is why I believe we call it a spiritual intervention, shall we say. That is why you were fed that. That is why I was fed my first book, Afterlife. I was told, we want you to be part of getting the word out about taking the fear out of death or so-called death. So I believe that this is exactly the same thing for you here, and that you have been chosen, and with your abilities and with the story and everything, that people will get so much out of the Golden Bridge.
Barry, thank you for saying that. I feel the same way. Um, I now I don't know whether did you read the little bit that I wrote at the head of the book?
Originally, you sent me a
No,
copy about 18 months ago, so I don't know whether it was in that or not.
I think you possibly didn't because
No, I
I,
don't think so, because when I look back the day before yesterday, when I started to read it again, I didn't see anything that I can recall right now, anyway.
yeah. Basically, what I said is that um, I take no ownership of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I wrote it with my eyes closed but my mind open. Um, and that it's not me, but it's all me.
Yeah,
And that I'm sort of paraphrasing now what I wrote.
sure.
Um, but that's the way I feel about it. It's it's just the weirdest thing, Barry. You know, like that's all I can say. It's just the weirdest thing. There are some things, that I've done which are very technical, and where I'm on top of it from a craft technical point of view. With this, the most important thing I did was let go
Mm, mm,
and create the space for it to come in,
yeah.
and then be diligent enough and professional enough, to then put it into a form that's accessible.
Isn't that enough for you? I mean, to me, that summarizes everything. I mean, it's there. You've created it with whatever outside influence or whatever. It doesn't matter, does it? Because it's what is there on the printed page. That's what counts.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, my dream for the book is this: that people go, Celestine Prophecy, tick. The Alchemist, tick. The Golden Bridge, tick. that's
The
my big
Golden
dream for
Bridge,
it.
the Golden Bridge puts that Celestine Prophecy way over in a corner. I mean, that had a breakthrough, but it's so your book. I'm not going to go further down. Why don't we now? Because all the listeners and all the viewers are thinking, God, tell us about this book. Instead, what it is that is so wonderful about it. Well, it's a journey. To me, it is the ultimate spiritual journey that has been described. The main character, Harry, is running. He's running away. And that is part of it. So running away from what? He meets so many wonderful characters. And we're not going to have any spoilers here, but it's his journey as he heads off, heading north, escaping something he wants to put behind him. So how many people are like that, I wonder? They want to escape. They're escaping in many different ways, whether it's through running away, whether it's through drugs or alcohol or whatever. So it's almost every man's journey.
Mm. The one of the things that was very important to me in the writing of the book was that I started off with a man who was very empirical in his thinking. He's a structural engineer and he builds bridges.
Yeah.
And from what I know of the engineers that I've met who are structural engineers, they do have a rigidity of worldview, if you like, that they need to have, I guess. That they live in the Newtonian world, if you like. They inhabit the Newtonian world.
Mm.
And what I wanted to do with the book, or at least what was given to me, was to take this man who leaves home on the morning of his wife's funeral. He doesn't go to the funeral, but you learn very early on in the book that he loved his wife passionately. But you also learn that he killed her and that the police are looking for him. And you don't know in his taking the back roads and the side tracks and things like that, whether he's doing this to evade the cops, keep away from the cops, or whether he's following a predestined path that's going to put him in front of this array of increasingly strange characters that begin to fundamentally change the way he looks at the world. Yeah.
It's a total transition from Harry, the engineer, to Harry, the spiritual being who is finally transitioning into who he really is deep down. And that is, I think, so many people in life. Deep down, they are that kind of spiritual being, but they're afraid or whatever. But there are so many characters, as you said, that Harry meets along the way. And the first one, we'll call him the interloper, because that probably is, he talks about running away. And he says, don't tell me you're not running from nothing, because I'll tell you, that's crap. Every man's running from something or someone, and if he's not, he hasn't lived a full life. Now that is enough to make people think, hey, well, have I lived a full life? Am I running? Have I ever run? Do I need to run? So running away is sort of the first part of Harry's journey there. And boy, doesn't that sort of open up. So tell us a bit about the characters that he meets, the interlope, running away. I mean, do we all need to run away? You've made so many films. Do we all need to run away, or are we running from something?
I think no character is ever named in the book,
No.
and there are no place names. There's no location names. I've done that purposefully. I haven't even said it in Australia as such, although people speak with an Australian accent. But Harry, you learn more about this man as his journey progresses, and as with any person who's lived for, I think, 63 years or so as he's aged, he has complications in his previous relationships with his family, with his business partner, with his wife. All of these begin to reveal themselves at various points, pressure points on his journey. But he's heading towards this mystical rock, and he is told that to be reunited with his deceased wife, which in itself is an absurdity. Yeah, to be reunited with his deceased wife, he has to build a golden bridge of light that will go across this mythical rock, and she'll be waiting for him on the other side. So this structural engineer who has defined his life through measurement, calculation, is confronted with this prospect. How do you build a golden bridge of light? How do you do that?
That's right. And when you talk about the rock, obviously the first thing any Australian or visitor to Australia will think is, okay, that's what we call Ayers Rock or Uluru. So the rock, then he starts to tune into the rock. So that's the wonderful thing about it. The rock becomes not just something who's going out of the desert, but something that's drawing him, something that's helping him to transition his life.
It emits a frequency that he picks up on, and it begins to disentangle his molecular structure, if you like. It's this fellow Johnny Walker. He wrote a foreword for it. Johnny Walker is one of the key people on the Camino, and the funny thing is, Barry, I sent Johnny. Johnny's sort of like the patriarch of the Camino worldwide. He's a highly intelligent, highly influential person, and I sent him the book just for his just because I wanted his feedback on it. I wasn't wanting anything else. But he came back. He wrote me this long email about it being Dickensian, like A Christmas Tale. But he said it was this epic pilgrimage. And I never thought of it as a pilgrimage tale.
Now, that's funny because I thought of it in that book that we all read as kids, The Pilgrim's Progress. That is what jumped into my mind before we started talking.
Yeah, well, it never occurred to me until John mentioned this. Because I just wrote. I didn't really think about it much. I just wrote, and I trusted that what I was being given would be legitimate.
Right.
Now,
Now,
that's not to say that I didn't, bring scholarship into it. I mean, there's a chapter, as you know, where he meets a fellow who turns out to be a dowser.
mm,
Um, and so I did quite a bit of research into dowsing, which is fascinating.
yeah. You
Um,
know, I'm a dowser as well, don't you?
Nothing would surprise me with you, Barry.
I can sit here
I
and I'll
make
hold
it
it up for those on TV. This is my pendulum that I use, and there we are. So there we are. I've been using dowsing now for over 30 years. It
it
is
works.
wonderful.
It works. It
Oh, it
works.
works. Believe me, it works.
Hmm. For this structural engineer who, as I say, has been absolutely resistant to
Mm.
take on concepts like this, when he meets a dowser who, in fact, is a geologist,
Geologist, yeah.
yeah, so he's academically qualified, and he explains his process in very scientific terms. It's very difficult for Harry, the structural engineer, to discount it. It's not woo-woo stuff. It's pegged very much in science.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the big things about this, because Harry, being, as you said, an engineer, very left-brained, all of a sudden his right brain starts to open up and he is correlating science with things like dowsing, things like spirituality, things like angels and all sorts of things. So he is opening up, as a lot of people in the world are right now, opening up to all the wonderful potential that's out there that we have so far pushed into a corner and said, oh, no, no, science says that's rubbish, so it must be rubbish, all conspiracy theory. So what you are doing, Bill, is opening people's minds and hearts with the character Harry and all the other people that he meets along his journey. And
Mm.
that, to me, is where it is so wonderful, because we can all, when we read it, and I hope everybody does, we can identify so much with each of these characters and how it would impact us in our life.
Mm.
Have you, what kind of impact has it had on your life with some of these characters?
Well, number one, I believe in, and 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it.
There you are.
Um, and I believe it absolutely.
Mm.
Um, I, um, Barry, I think we all come here with a job to do, and you know what your job is,
How many
and
people do, though? That's the trouble, Bill. How many people do? Or they hide it or run away from it.
mm, yeah, they reject it,
Mm.
um, or they don't fully embrace it because they're too fearful.
Too fearful, yeah.
Yeah, but you've got a job to do, and you have developed skills that enable you to do that job very effectively. And one of the things that I've noticed with Spirit is that Spirit chooses people that have communication skills because that's the way Spirit gets its message out.
Mm.
You look at Lee Carroll. He was an audio engineer, before he started channeling. You look at Paul Selig. He was a dramatist before he started doing his extraordinary stuff.
Mm.
Um, you talked before about me being chosen, and I do, I do actually believe that I've been chosen because I'm able to make a film. I'm able to write a book. It's taken me a long time to develop those skills, and I developed those skills doing other stuff. Like with movies, thrillers, and romantic comedies and stuff like that. Um, but now I can see that these skills are being redirected
Yeah.
uh, to, if you like, a higher purpose.
Mm.
I don't like to talk in those sort of terms, but
No,
you
but I understand
understand.
because I feel exactly the same way.
Mm,
I mean, I could have stayed on as a radio and TV presenter on mainstream, but my path was pushed in another direction. And I feel that you have done the same thing with the films you've made in the last few years, particularly. and and the wonderful film you're putting together now on your walk in the Camino. Now, how much of Harry is in Bill? Because Bill did the big walk on the Camino, wrote a book which has been incredibly popular, and is now about to, in a few months' time anyway, release a wonderful film on the Camino. So, how much of Harry is in Bill, or how much of Bill is in Harry?
Um, my daughter is a barrister. She's a criminal barrister. And I sent her the first two chapters of the book. And she called up Jennifer, my wife, a day later. And she said, "Be careful. He's going to try and kill you."
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Oh, you've got to read the book to really get that folding back.
reference. Yeah. Um,
Oh dear.
it's scary close. There's detail in the book that only Jennifer and I know is pertinent to us. For instance, he talks about going for a walk and collecting a posy and pulling little flowers off
That's for
overhanging
his wife's funeral, yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
and putting that posy on her coffin above her heart,
Mm.
things like that. Um, there's there's a lot of me in the book, Barry, and I think probably the most important thing that's in the book that's me is the fact that I have personally gone from being somebody who was very linear uh, in my thinking to somebody now who understands that the nature of reality and the world in which we live is an illusion, and that there is this whole entire other world that's waiting for us.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, when I did that thing, when I did the Google and went, "What's my life expectancy?" I thought, damn, I wish I actually had fewer years to live.
Don't put a number on yourself right now, Bill. Remember what Harry has told along the way. We all have exit points in our
Mm,
life. I know I've had a couple. I had one
mm.
last year. But once we can get through those, we keep on going until our journey is over.
Until our work is done.
Well, the same thing.
Yeah. And I do believe that I have more work to do.
You certainly have.
Yeah. As do you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So, Bill, we can talk for ages and ages. I want people to get hold of the book. It's coming out almost as we go to air. So, is it going to be freely available? Is it going to be out there on the internet, bookstores? What's the story?
So the plan is, and I'm just waiting, in fact, on the formatter because I was expecting it to be him to be a little bit swifter than he's being. But the plan is for it to be a sort of a twofold release. Well, for a start, let me just explain. When I finished the book, I sent it to a publisher in New York, uh, um, like a big deal,
Hmm.
highly prestigious publisher.
Yeah.
He read it and he took it on immediately.
I bet
And
you did.
I was in incredible company, with the authors that this publisher has in his stable,
Hmm.
like incredible people. And I thought, this is fantastic. And then I got a no on it.
Really?
I got a big no on it. And I
What, from the publisher or
no, 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 I mean from
from upstairs?
from yeah. We started, he issued contracts and I brought in my lawyer and he brought in his lawyer and the whole thing,
Hmm.
so it got to quite an advanced stage. And I just kept on getting this big no. And I pulled out of it.
Mm.
I just pulled out of it. I just, and common sense would say you're crazy because he was going to do quite a big push on it, and it was. I can't remember all the people but the leading spiritual writers in the world. This fellow had on is publishing.
Mm.
Um, but I've learned to listen to this stuff, and
Yeah.
I pulled out of it. And then I went to a smaller imprint in Melbourne, in fact. And this fellow said yes immediately. And I pulled out of that as well. Um, and maybe in part because I've been published by Penguin Random House, as you know.
Mm.
They published my trilogy of supernatural thrillers, which in fact are a Trojan horse for the soul journey. Those three books are all about the soul journey.
Right.
Um, so I've been published by a mainstream publisher, and I've self-published the Camino book, and the Camino book has been, as you say, very, very successful.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, bugger it, look, I may as well self-publish. And I've got a sufficient following now that I'm going to, there are going to be people who are going to read it.
Mm.
And so what I'm doing at the moment is, so I've taken on the ebook and print on demand rights, and I'm talking to a publisher about him taking on the book rights. So that it'll get out into bookstores and that sort of thing, but it will also be available on Amazon.
Right.
Yeah, as a paperback or whatever. I'm thinking of doing a special edition, like a beautiful cloth-bound edition with lovely sort of parchment style paper and beautiful font and all that sort of thing, and sort of larger than a normal book. The people can send others for gifts, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think the book has that kind of timeless quality to it, if you like.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing. It's a funny thing, Barry. Look, I'm not ambitious in any of this stuff at all. Like when I published the Camino book, I published the Camino book more as an aid for me to understand why I'd done the bloody Camino. I wasn't expecting it to sell. And 10 years later, it's still selling solidly.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I guess as we put this program to air, people are thinking, well, hang on, how am I going to get a copy of this? Or when, where, how?
Well, fingers crossed it should be on Amazon either later this week or next week.
Right. Okay.
And that's a starting point. And then depending upon the printing process and so forth, it should be in booksellers. I'm hoping that it will be in bookstores by Christmas.
By Christmas. Good. That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. So the other thing now you're finishing is your wonderful film on the Camino, based on the book. And that is, well, that'll be next year sometime. But you're almost at you're at the real pointy end right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I literally just had a fine cut screening this afternoon at Fox Studios.
Mm-hmm.
The film's in good shape now. It's the screening was principally for myself and the editor, but we invited about 30 diehard Camino people, because I wanted them to see the film, get their feedback. They loved it.
Yeah. Good.
They loved it. You know, it's a true, authentic picture of the spirit of the Camino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when it is released, please come back and talk to me again on radio and on TV. And we might even be able to, my editing skills may have got to the stage where I can actually pop a trailer on my TV part of it. So, Bill,
You're, hmm.
it's wonderful. Thank you so much. I know you're madly busy. You're working long hours, everything like that. But thanks for taking the time out to come and talk to me about the Golden Bridge. And I know there's a pot of gold certainly at the end of that rainbow, especially for Harry and so many people who are going to read it. Thanks, Bill.
Look, thank you so much.
The Golden Bridge. For viewers and listeners to Radio Out There, I could not recommend it enough. It's a spiritual journey that will certainly have its effect on you. Thanks a lot. See you next time on Radio Out There.